And no, I sailed on that ship in the Pacific, and then I was on another tanker, Gulf Oil Company tanker. And then I took one trip on the Liberty ship out of New York. Took a tanker, a Gulf Oil Company tanker out of New York on the Liberty ship. Took one trip we went to North Africa and had to anchor there until they got the city of Marseille, or the port of Marseille, stabilized enough so they could get us in there to get us unloaded. We were in North Africa, across from Marseille, southern France.
Mm-hmm.
And I got in, well, when we tried to get into the harbor, you'd never seen so many ships on the bottom. The harbor was all plugged up with ships at the German sub. We knew they had to abandon.
Yeah.
And then I took two more in Seattle. I took one, just two more. It seems to me like there was three. But anyway, I was on the reefer ship. I went to Japan. No, that wasn't it. It's not a reefer ship. I went to Japan. I've been to Japan twice. And then Korea. And that was a reefer ship. I took another ship that went through the Panama Canal, through the Mediterranean, stopped in Greece. And Egypt, and on through the Dardanelles, Turkey, Istanbul, on to Odessa, Russia, and came back home. One of the ships I was on, it was a Liberty ship I was on. I think it was a Liberty ship. Yeah, it was a Liberty ship I was on. Broke down out in the middle of the Atlantic. We were setting out there in the middle of the Atlantic. They sent a destroyer with us for a while, and finally the destroyer says, I've got nothing they used to do to protect the other ships. You're out here all by yourself. Finally got going. We went back to the United States.
How long did it take you to get from back then? How long, with those ships, how long did it take you to get, say, from New York over to Europe? How many days?
My memory doesn't serve me very well, but let's say you average 10 knots at 2,000 miles. 10 knots, say 300 miles a day. Or how many miles? 2,000 miles, 300 miles a day. Seems to me like they can cross it in 4 or 5 days to Europe, from New York. At least one of the convoys that I was on, was the 4-knot convoy. The Liberty ships were quite slow, but they weren't slow as the old coal burners that they had in there. And then sometimes they traveled slow too, because they know there were submarines ahead, and they're maneuvering to make the submarines travel farther, keep them guessing. But I do remember the one we were at 4 knots. The tanker that I was on, we were fueling the fleet. It would run at 14 knots. 14 knots. It was capable of 21 knots. It would run at 14 knots, and the reason that we ran at 14 knots was to save fuel. That you'd hit it, you'd zigzag back and forth, to prevent the submarines from getting an easy shot at you. So you'd zigzag all the way across. And when you'd travel from Panama, say to New Guinea, when we could get that far, that's over a third of the way around the world. And that takes a long time, a lot of fuel. And when you're zigzagging, even more fuel.
Right.
Panama, by the way, is just about due south of New York, close to due south of New York. It curves around that much. And the Atlantic end of the Panama Canal is west of the Pacific Canal. It goes up. It's almost due north and south. But one of the things that I got towards the end of the war, I have a radio out there, an SX-25. I give it to Darrell, a communications receiver, and I had it on the ship all set up. And for an antenna, I used to take an ordinary straw broom, stick it in the dog for the porthole, and put an insulator on the end of the radio antenna wire and hang it down alongside the ship with the broom sticking out alongside the ship to get reception.
Huh.
And most of the guys that I was around, I didn't keep a secret or anything like that. But one of the purser came in there, and I think it was a purser, and maybe somebody else called his attention to it, took a look at it, looked at it, and he didn't know that it was just a communications receiver, not a transmitter. And he ran to the captain. He had that whole ship turned stormy that there was a spy aboard ship using the radio broadcasting. He had the more excited ones all panicked. Officers included. You know, they got the radio officer down there and took one look at it. He started laughing.
So what did you pick up on that radio? Just what was going on out there? Or?
Yeah, I listened to the German radio broadcasts. I like to listen on the tanker that we was on in the Pacific most of that time. We used to pick up Tokyo Rose. We used to listen to her program all the time. You ever heard of that? There was a woman born in Oregon, went over to Japan, and she had a radio broadcast. They're broadcasting over shortwave radio to the Americans as a propaganda, trying to get them to sow seeds of dissent amongst the Americans. She had a very good program. We used to listen to all of them. And they had Axis Sally who did the same thing on the German. They called her Axis Sally. This woman from Oregon, she was Japanese, American-born Japanese. She was of Japanese parents who were nationalized. They wouldn't allow them nationalized in those years. They were considered undesirable aliens. They tried her for treason, and she was in prison for maybe a year after the war.
Huh.
Some time in prison after the war. But there was one high school student ahead of me that had no intention of, he was Japanese, American born. He went back to Japan for a visit, and they put him in the army. You don't get any choice, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I used to tell, this is true, it's about my life. I used to tell Rick's kids, and they liked it. I told them about this little boy. I didn't identify him by his name. And about this little boy that lived way up in the mountains. There was no cars, no street lights, no electricity. And there was a railroad train that went through. And one time when his mother was about due to give him another brother, a younger brother, he took him to the train with her. You want to turn it off? And they got on the train. As they were sitting on the train, the big city of Seattle. Mind you, he hadn't seen any bright lights or He lived way up in the mountains, and when it was dark at night, it was dark. Anyway, you were riding on the train, and all of a sudden, like, they came across a bridge, and all of a sudden, they were in a tunnel. And then back out, they're on a bridge again, and then all of a sudden, they're in a tunnel, and it was all black. And there is a series of tunnels on that railroad line that are just like that. They're underwater. Some of them is underwater now. But he got to Seattle, and they got to Ravensdale. Why, he got off the train and got in his uncle's brand new 1929 Model A. First car that he'd ridden in or even seen. And drove to Seattle and to his grandmother's place upon 1747 Dawson Street in Seattle. And after a brief visit with the family, well, it was time for him to go to bed. So they put him in a room up over the kitchen, put him in bed. Even though he objected, but he could still hear him talking down in the kitchen just below him. So real quietly, he would go over to the window and open the window and watch the lights in Seattle and the cars going up and down the street. And he'd stand there for a while, and he'd close the window real quietly and sneak back into bed. And after a while, he still couldn't sleep. After a while, he'd get up and go out and open that window and look at all the street lights and the cars and everything else. And my grandfather, my uncle had a 29 Model A, and grandfather had a one Model T touring car. It didn't have windows in it. You don't have the isinglass curtains. And that's pretty much the end of that.